What would you do if you posted a single photo online and suddenly found yourself being judged by thousands of strangers? What if they started saying there was something wrong with your hair? That your career choice wasn't respectable? That your family wasn't good enough? What if they even started making up things you never did? What would you do then? And what if you reported it to the police, filed complaints, explained yourself, collected evidence, and tried everything you could, but the attacks just kept coming? What would you do? In today's story, Zheng Linghua did what most ordinary people would do. She didn't disappear. She didn't hide. She stood up for herself. She gathered evidence. She contacted lawyers. She gave interviews. She tried to turn the harm being done to her into something the law could actually see and address. But in the end, a young woman whose only intention was to share good news with her grandfather never made it past the age of 23. And that's what makes this story so heartbreaking, because it doesn't feel distant. It didn't happen in some dark corner of history. It happened in comment sections. It happened underneath repost buttons. It happened on the same internet all of us use every single day. We're not telling this story to turn her suffering into entertainment. We're telling it because Zheng Linghua was not just another internet headline. She wasn't a hashtag. She wasn't a viral topic. She was a real person, a person who lived, who worked hard, who loved people, and who once looked forward to her future with excitement. Zheng Linghua was born in 1999 and grew up in Hangzhou, China. She studied music-related education at Zhejiang Normal University. According to public reports, her friends and teachers consistently described her as hardworking, optimistic, and determined. She loved music. She loved singing, and she hoped that one day she could become an elementary school music teacher. Can you picture that? A young teacher standing in front of a classroom full of children, teaching them songs, encouraging them to find their voices, and helping them feel confident enough to express themselves. She wasn't someone who had everything handed to her either. Reports say she worked part-time jobs to support herself. She used her earnings to pay for language classes and dance lessons. She wasn't trying to show off. She wasn't chasing internet fame. She was simply working hard and building a future step by step. Her grandfather was also one of the most important people in her life. She was raised primarily by her father, grandfather, and grandmother, and her grandfather became one of the strongest sources of support throughout her childhood. So when she was accepted into a graduate program at East China Normal University, the first person she wanted to share the news with was him.
So that photo was really just a normal family celebration, right?
Exactly. The kind of thing any of us might do. You get accepted into school, you get promoted, you earn a certificate, and the first thing you want to do is tell the people you love. On July 13th, 2022, Zheng Linghua posted a photo on social media. In the photo, she was standing beside her grandfather in the hospital, and she had pink hair. That single detail would eventually become the doorway through which an avalanche of hatred entered her life. But before we continue, we need to stop for a moment and talk about something important. Because to many people outside China, this next part can seem impossible to understand. How did a young woman with pink hair end up becoming the target of a nationwide moral judgment? In a lot of societies, and honestly all over the world, people have these unwritten expectations about what certain people are supposed to look like. A female student should look innocent. A future teacher should look conservative. A top university student should look serious. A young woman visiting her grandfather in the hospital should be quiet and modest. On the surface, those expectations sound harmless, like manners, like tradition. But a lot of the time, they quietly turn into rules. Rules about who gets accepted. Rules about who gets judged. Rules about who gets attacked. And when a young woman looks too different, too colorful, too confident, or simply doesn't fit the picture that some strangers have already created in their heads, people start labeling her almost instantly. They're not talking about what she did, they're judging who they think she is.
But what does pink hair have to do with whether she's a good student or a good teacher?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. But that's one of the scariest things about internet mobs. They don't need logic, they just need a symbol, something easy to target. For Zheng Linghua, that symbol was her pink hair. And that's where everything started to spiral out of control. According to public reports, her photo was reposted and stolen by multiple content accounts. Some people completely rewrote her story, turning her into clickbait. One account claimed she was an ordinary girl who had fought her way into a prestigious university. Another used her image to sell courses. Others used her story to attract followers and make money. The problem? None of it was true. She wasn't the person in their made-up story. At that point, it was already a violation of her rights. But things got much worse. The comments became increasingly vicious. Some people attacked her hair color. Some questioned her character. Others spread rumors about her personal life. Some linked her to stereotypes involving nightlife, partying, or other stigmatized labels that had absolutely nothing to do with reality. And unbelievably, some people even started attacking her grandfather, the elderly man lying in the hospital bed beside her. Honestly, this is the part that really hurts to think about, because you eventually have to stop and ask, what exactly did she do wrong? She didn't scam anyone. She didn't hurt anyone. She didn't start a fight. She didn't insult anybody. She simply shared a happy moment.
That's it. So was her first reaction to call the police?
Yes, public reports show that after discovering her photos had been stolen and misused, she immediately reported the situation and filed complaints with the platforms involved. But the process didn't go smoothly. She later reported the abuse to cybercrime authorities and began collecting evidence herself. And honestly, this might be the most absurd part of the entire story. Imagine being the person under attack. While thousands of people are targeting you, you're also expected to become your own investigator, taking screenshots, recording videos, saving links, organizing files, documenting everything, proving your own suffering. Zheng Linghua spent her own money to notarize evidence. Reports indicate that she submitted more than 190 screenshots and video files as legal evidence. The cost was around 4,000 yuan, and a significant portion of that money came from part-time teaching jobs she worked herself. Think about that for a second. A random stranger can spend 5 seconds posting a hateful comment, but for the victim to prove that the comment caused harm, to identify who posted it, to demonstrate that the abuse wasn't isolated, to prove the damage was real, that process can take months, sometimes even longer.
That's such an unfair fight. One person against a crowd of anonymous accounts.
Exactly. And that's what makes this case feel so suffocating. Zheng Linghua didn't stay silent. She released legal statements. She publicly announced that she intended to pursue accountability. She even replied to some of the posts attacking her, informing people that evidence had already been collected and legal action was being considered. And at one point, she said something that still hits hard today. She explained that she was standing up and fighting back because she hoped there would be one less person driven to suicide by cyberbullying in the future. That's a heavy sentence, because she understood exactly what she was walking into. She knew speaking out would probably bring more attacks. She knew more people would come after her. But she also knew that if nobody pushed back, this case would disappear like so many others. Buried by the algorithm, buried by the news cycle, buried by people saying, just let it go, move on, forget about it. And she refused to let that happen. But the hate didn't stop just because she fought back. Some people did apologize. Public reports mentioned that more than a dozen users eventually reached out and apologized to her. But that was only a tiny fraction of the accounts she had documented. Most people stayed hidden behind anonymous usernames and screens. And in some cases, the attacks actually got worse when she defended herself. The more she explained, the more people accused her of chasing attention. The more evidence she showed, the more people called her too sensitive. The more she talked about being hurt, the more people mocked her for being mentally weak. And that's one of the cruelest parts of cyberbullying. It hits you once, then it turns around and asks why you're in pain. That's what people often call secondary victimization. Not only are you attacked, you get attacked again for reacting to the attack. Over time, Zheng Linghua developed severe depression. According to public reports, she sought help from mental health professionals and was hospitalized for treatment. She tried to return to school. She tried to continue studying. She tried to rebuild a normal life. She tried. That's the part people often forget. One detail reported by China Youth Daily is especially heartbreaking. Attached to her final letter was an application to return to school. Think about that for a moment. In that same document, she talked about wanting to continue her education, wanting to recover, wanting to regain the ability to function normally in society.
So she wasn't trying to give up on life. She was fighting to get back to it.
Exactly. And that's why it's so unfair when people reduce stories like this to a single sentence. She was just too fragile. Honestly, that's a deeply cruel thing to say, because she wasn't someone who did nothing. She reported the abuse, filed complaints, collected evidence, paid for notarization, contacted lawyers, accepted interviews, released legal statements, sought medical treatment, stayed in the hospital, tried to continue studying, tried to keep moving forward. She did so many of the things an ordinary person is told they're supposed to do. The problem wasn't a lack of effort. The problem was what she was up against. She wasn't fighting one person. She was fighting an environment. Legal experts interviewed by media outlets have pointed out something important about cyberbullying. The harm isn't simply the sum of individual comments. One comment by itself might seem insignificant. Someone can always say, "I was just giving my opinion. It was only a joke. It was only one comment." But when thousands of those comments pile together day after day, when they create a nonstop atmosphere of humiliation, hostility, and public shaming, the damage becomes something much larger, something harder to escape. It's like being trapped in a blizzard with no visible end. Every snowflake says, "I didn't really do anything." But eventually, people can freeze to death inside the storm. Now let's talk about the legal side of this story. In China, cyberbullying can involve violations of reputation rights, image rights, and privacy rights. In more serious cases, it may also involve crimes such as public insult, defamation, or the illegal disclosure of personal information. But in reality, seeking justice is incredibly difficult. First, identifying the people responsible isn't easy. Victims often don't know who is behind anonymous accounts and must first request user information through platforms or legal procedures. Second, preserving evidence is expensive and exhausting. Screenshots, screen recordings, notarization, documentation, all of it requires time, money, and emotional energy. And by that point, many victims are already on the edge of psychological collapse. Third, cyberbullying is usually collective. One comment alone may not seem severe enough to trigger legal consequences. But when hundreds or thousands arrive at once, they create an overwhelming environment that can become emotionally devastating. And fourth, platform responsibility is complicated. Social media platforms aren't just places where information spreads. They also control account systems, recommendation algorithms, traffic distribution, moderation tools, and reporting mechanisms. If harmful content isn't handled quickly enough, the damage can spread at an incredible speed.
So it's not that she never asked for help. It's that the entire chain of help moved too slowly.
Exactly. And that's one of the most painful lessons this case leaves behind. You could definitely put it that way. Zheng Linghua asked for help. She fought back. She took action. But every step in the real world was painfully slow, incredibly difficult, and emotionally exhausting. After Zheng Linghua's death, public discussions about cyberbullying surged once again across China. In September 2023, China's Supreme People's Court, Supreme People's Procuratorate, and Ministry of Public Security jointly released new guidelines aimed at cracking down on cyberbullying-related crimes. The message was clear: the internet is not above the law, and victims deserve meaningful legal protection and remedies. But for Zheng Linghua, those changes came too late. And honestly, I don't want to end this story by talking about the people who attacked her, because if we do that, they steal the spotlight from her one more time. So let's go back to Zheng Linghua herself. She loved music. She dreamed of becoming an elementary school music teacher. She worked hard. She earned her place in graduate school. She dyed her hair pink because she wanted her graduation photos to feel a little brighter, a little more colorful, a little more like herself. She brought her admission letter to show her grandfather because she wanted to share one of the happiest moments of her life with someone she loved. She was never just the girl with pink hair. She had a name. Her name was Zheng Linghua. And the reason we remember her today isn't to permanently trap her inside the tragedy that happened to her. It's because her story reminds us of something simple. A person has the right to dye their hair whatever color they want. A person has the right to celebrate their achievements. A person has the right to share their happiness without becoming a target. And a person deserves to be treated with basic human kindness. Maybe that's the lesson we should take away from all of this. Before hitting post, before leaving that comment, before sharing that outrage-filled screenshot, pause for 1 second. Just one. Because on the other side of the screen isn't a trending topic, isn't a hashtag, isn't a viral controversy. It's a human being, a real one. Thank you for spending this time with me and listening to such a heavy story. And I hope that when people remember Zheng Linghua, they don't only remember what happened to her. I hope they remember how hard she worked, how much she cared, how brightly she tried to live, and how much life she still had ahead of her.